Let's kick off. So welcome again, everybody. Today we've got some great speakers lined up for you, working together in collaboration on the Compliance Conundrum collaboration. I'm just going to share now an introduction. You may have seen this already if you've been to other sessions.
An estimate by the IMF states that AI can raise the world economic growth up to 0.8% or contribute approximately 15.7 trillion US dollar by 2030 to the global economy. On the flip side,
Where did Matt go? Oh no.
He has disappeared.
I'm sure he is scrambling to
For
come
sure.
back.
Elena, maybe if you have it, you can project it.
Yeah, let me bring it up and then I will. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, super. And let's see if I am able to, I don't know if I can share my audio. Let's see.
When you first share your screen, there's an option on like the right-hand side to tick share with sound. So you might have to unshare and reshare.
Hi, folks. I'm sorry there had to be a technical glitch. My laptop just completely crashed just as we were starting the session. So apologies.
No, I'm sorry. Matt, I was about to just start sharing my screen. Would that be helpful?
Yes, Eleanor, if you can, that would be great. Thank you. Otherwise,
Sure.
I'm good. I'm hopefully good to go again now. My laptop is back on and working.
Okay, let me at least play this
Super.
this video for you and then we can
Super.
and then I
Apologies,
can switch
everybody.
over to you.
Apologies.
All right.
an estimate by the IMF states that AI can raise the world economic growth up to 0.8% or contribute approximately 15.7 trillion US dollar by 2030 to the global economy. On the flip side, over 30 million jobs may need to be reconsidered over the next 5 years. Across the sessions, you will hear from technologists pushing the boundaries of what it is possible, entrepreneurs and educators rethinking the future of work, and faith leaders reminding us that progress must be grounded in compassion, justice, and dignity. These conversations goes beyond tools and systems that ask bigger questions. How do we ensure technology serves humanity? How do we design economies that are fair, inclusive, and ready for the future? And how can values guide innovation towards a more just and sustainable world? This is a space to share insights, challenge assumptions, and collaborate on solutions of change. Welcome to these sessions present by Catalyst Now.
Are we good, Matt?
Yeah, thank you, Eleanor.
All right.
And
No
yeah,
problem.
good to be back with you all again. But it proves that, of course, we are but human when these things happen, right? So So just a bit of housekeeping. So please keep your video on if possible. I saw a message in the chat to say somebody's unwell today. I really hope you're feeling better soon. So sending best wishes to you. Please share your name and your company so we can see who you are and where you're calling from. Please, of course, unmute when you speak. And please do enjoy the session. Just a little bit about Catalyst. Many of you will be familiar with the organization, but we are a dynamic global movement of social innovators transforming systems and driving sustainable change to advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals worldwide. We co-create spaces where the world's social innovators connect, collaborate, and contribute to transformational change. So please join us if you're not a member already. We can share the link in the chat through the process of this conversation. And all of this, of course, Catalyst Now and all our wonderful members, all of this is made possible through the support of our ecosystem partners and our wonderful partners and supporters of this now largest global movement of the world's largest global movement of social innovators coming together to collaborate. And on that note, thank you, everybody. Apologies for the technical hiccup, but I will hand over to Eleanor and colleagues to frame us for the session and walk us through our discussion. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, everyone. It's great to see some familiar faces that I haven't seen in a long time. So hello to everyone and the new faces that I've never seen. My name is Elena Gillis. I am the managing director of Kuja, which is, as you can see on the screen, one of the partners working on the compliance Conundrum collaboration. You'll get some background about the compliance conundrum soon from one of my colleagues, but we wanted to start with explaining why we're here today and with a short activity for all of us to sort of get into the groove of things. Our group was born from a session during the Catalyzing Change Week 2 years ago. And so the session gathered folks to ask the question, how can compliance and due diligence work for impact, not against it? And since then, this group has been working on building a shared understanding about how to strengthen trust and really try to make or answer the question about how compliance can be a driver for resilience rather than a barrier. And so today we're excited to loop back around 2 years later and present the first phase of findings that our group has had and talk about where we're going from here. The session has a mix of presentation and participation. One of my favorite aspects of being part of this collaboration is that we're really honest and we come to the table with openness to share. We really lean on each other to explore some of the sticky areas and opportunities that we see. And so today we also ask you all to contribute and share your own thoughts in the same spirit, honestly, and really with a sense of curiosity and trust. And so we'll start with an activity. Matt will put up a link to a Mentimeter that we'll be using for this activity, but there will be 3 questions. The first is, when you hear the word compliance, what comes to your mind first? And that will sort of populate a word cloud. The second question is, have you noticed or experienced changes to compliance and due diligence in the sector? And the third is, in the past year, right, sort of expanding on this second question, can you name a change that you have experienced in terms of compliance and due diligence? And then, so we'll give, 5 minutes or so to answer those questions, and then we'll come back and do some observations of what we're seeing.
Yeah, thanks, Helena. And I've posted the link directly into the chat. You can scan the QR code here on the screen or go to menti.com and use the code here to plug in. And the questions will be awaiting for you in Mentimeter.
Well, maybe you can reshare the QR code, Matt, because we're only seeing the third question when we click the link.
Okay, I can do that, of course. Or go to menti.com and plug in this code here, 38267629. Is that working, Caroline?
I still just get that in the past year, can you share a change question? But maybe if I go to the website.
Matt, sometimes it moves with what page you've opened, I think.
Yeah, it should be there now if you have a look.
Mm.
Is that working for people now? You get it?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, super.
Hi, Erin. Just to answer your question, so the context of this, really, the reason why we're asking these questions is really just to get a sense from the group on how we're feeling about about compliance or due diligence. And by due diligence, we're talking about the required policies and fiscal regulations in general about that are required by donors in order to receive funds for your organization right. And so the compliance requirements or due diligence requirements that donors expect from organizations that they fund. Is that helpful? And it's really just to set a conversation for the rest of our time together. We're not utilizing this in any way. We won't be publishing this in any way. Yes, correct. Yep. So anyone that's providing funds, including intermediaries doing subgranting. Thank you for the question. And Matt, I see a comment here. Can you move to the next question? It says waiting for presenter to change slides. And so in the word cloud, I was seeing a lot about regulation, risk aversion. I was seeing sort of different words for the same sentiment of really contractual or inflexible, yep, and clunky, tedious, a lot about control, perhaps power inequality. Thanks, Matt. Interesting. Some of the Caroline, yeah, some of the reactions here, right? We're seeing either due diligence and compliance stay the same, or there seems to be more, which is also what I'm hearing through the grapevine, talking to different organizations, particularly local organizations receiving subgrants or funding in the last year or so. So, all right. So I'm going to yeah, this seems to, so what we can do is I think we can share the Menti again, and Matt, you can exit this screen and then we can come back to it at the end if you'd like. When we're sort of wrapping up, we can review that last question perhaps. And so if you are having a hard time getting from one question to the next, Irene, I see your comment here. If you could try it now, see if it works for you, and we'll come back to it at the end of the session. Thank you. So I'll pass to, I believe I'm passing to Chilande. Yes?
Yes, I was looking for the mute button. By now it should be automatic, but no. So what does the journey look like for us so far? I mean, when we came together, as Elena said, we were all organizations on the same, trying to work within the same ecosystem, but having, different conversations. And then when we came together, we realized that we had a shared frustration about just how much this due diligence and compliance systems, which were intended to be about accountability, had now become a barrier to what the whole world seemed to be working towards. And so, where we try to think about do we even have what is within our control to try and reimagine what compliance could look like. And so we started off by just trying to name what the problem is. So really surfacing some of the pain points that are felt most acutely by, small, medium, and even large members of civil society, mostly within the global majority world, and try to find some shared language an understanding of what the issue is. But then we went over time into a learning journey with various funders. We have consulted quite a number of especially from the philanthropy world, most of those who reside within, the global majority world, philanthropic organizations and those that, enable philanthropy in different ways. And also key, what we're now calling, we still need to look for a proper word, but for now we're still using intermediaries in this space who interact on a regular basis with this issue of compliance and due diligence. And so we found ourselves, and we were reflecting recently about what the journey has looked like over the past 1 year when we're really going hard at it. And we realized that what this collaborative has then morphed into is some kind of a map we've actually mapped out what the power dynamics look like. We've tried to also act as a bridge of perspectives and insights for those who apply these various rules and regulations and those who are applied to some of these. And we also have found ourselves really providing a negotiating table where we could have very difficult, what is emerging to be difficult, but very necessary conversations around this topic across all the different players in here. And so we have had to embrace a lot of learning and unlearning, leaning into some discomforts, and naming some of the dynamics that are there. And our learning curve has been steep actually, but very generative. What we have found is that, first and foremost, that funders are listening, but the narratives are still very much shaped by the dominant, power holders. And so there is intention, but implementation seems to be very difficult. Along with that, we've seen that while this appetite for actually reforming, once we have those conversations are there, it needs to be intentionally nurtured, particularly within those working within the legal and compliance teams. So, there was a little bit of, okay, folks seem to be ready, but, they don't quite seem to feel like they have the agency to take action. And so, we've just come to the level where there's a lot of proposals and thinking around how do we co-create solutions, what do we pilot, what does that look like, but then really pretty much seeing that who we bring to the table matters, within all these conversations. So many people do come, but do we have the right people on, at the negotiating table? So if you move on to the next slide. So while it looked a little bit bleak, we also saw that there's actually hope. We did see some bright spots, and even as I talk through what we quickly identified, I'd like for you to also chime in and tell us what you're also seeing or feeling or evidence of what I'm just going to present to you. Some of the bright spots we saw, first and foremost, the fact that funders are engaged, and we did speak to more than 100 in the end. They're engaged and they're listening, and they are acknowledging the fact that there is a problem, that this is actually a problem. There's something that needs to be done. So that's, for us, is a bright spot. First step, tick, create a sense of urgency. But we're also seeing some people embracing some very bold moves. We're seeing some organizations, for example, somebody introduced the idea of radical trust, where we're seeing organizations actually doing away with the paperwork completely and saying, look, I am going to meet you. I'm going to build a relationship with you. We'll go on a journey of me doing the work to understand you, and hear you and figure out what is actually working for you. And so that gives us, some hope, a lot of hope actually, that actually people are doing this and it's working out. And of course, some of the things we're thinking about is maybe spotlighting those a lot more. But let me pause there and get, harvest from the room. What are you seeing? What are you hearing from your corners of the world are some of the bright spots with regards to this conversation? Do you have any? And if none is also a response. You can just, I think, unmute, or you could use the chat as well. Any? Irene, I'm very curious, perhaps, do you want to say something about the trust-based philanthropy movement?
Yes, hello, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for your meeting. Yes, I have, I just finished a study on unrestricted funding, so I went very deep into what means the trust-based philanthropy movement. And it was very interesting to witness the great difference between their way of thinking relationships with grantees, that they do not call grantees but partners. And at the same time, what I can see in Western Africa, for example, with AFD, aside of the, the lack of new means and the diminution of all the budget of all those donors, is that they are so afraid to fund terrorism, and so they ask so many new documents that you have to hire somebody just to put those documents ready. So it's kind of this new difference between philanthropists who go ahead and who try to create a real other way of doing, and who can fund national organizations directly in countries, and institutional donors who do not take this boat, and intermediaries. Even the funders that I have questioned said, well, sometimes intermediaries, so it's like international NGOs, they put more requirements and more rules to their partners directly on the field that we have asked them to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a complaint from donors to intermediaries saying, please do not ask things that we do not even want you to ask from the partners on the field. I don't know if I was clear. I'm in the street and there are many noises. So.
No, I think we had you clear. And I think one of the things that I know has been very contentious is the idea of passing through the what do you call it? People call it different things, but what's that fund, Matt? It's English is escaping me. When you have some money to build your operations to an admin in a grant.
Overhead.
There you go.
Overhead, core support, core support.
Operation.
That one, director, thank you, Jean. Isabella, yes, so that has been one of the contentious areas also, and intermediaries have been being put on the spot by multilaterals about passing through at least a percentage of that. So yes, thank you for that example. Are there any other bright spots? We also had some funders talk about, starting to co-create the relationship and co-create solutions. I don't know. I think when you hear from one side, it sounds like a good idea. I have also heard from civil society organizations on this side saying how much co-creation can really happen when you have the power dynamics aspect. So I don't know. Can you say no when the funder is in the room and making a suggestion? So there's also that side of things. I don't know. Maybe co-creation processes require the trust building piece also to go and work alongside that. But Melvin, go for it.
Yeah, the other interesting thing is because intermediaries are now closing shops simply because of the funding issues, funders are now looking at smaller organizations and making it work, essentially, even sometimes bypassing due diligence, simply because it's cheaper for them. And they're realizing that they would want to support more organizations, not just on overheads, but more sustainability. But of course, selfishly, they also want to push money as much as they can in anticipation that perhaps there'll be some policy changes in the US. So we are seeing to some extent that some funders are trying as much as possible to bypass their rule books. Not across board, but that is happening slowly. Another thing that is happening is we are going back to service provision, or what you call service delivery in the global majority. Not so much policy, and policy can range all the way from, gender rights, LGBTQ, climate change, to more trying to fill in the gap that has been left, especially social spending. And for those ones, you'll need last mile organizations. So those are things that, and again, it's not all encompassing, but there are those movements that are happening, which is a good thing because these small organizations are now more visible than they were before. They are more needed. But again, one of the biggest things is that being crowded out. as these large organizations now reassess some of the funders that they would want to go to, they're now going for the same ports that these smaller organizations ideally were getting the resources from.
Yeah. Thank you, Melvin. It does sound like everybody's going to the same people lately. But any other thoughts? Actually, it's good you've spoken, Melvin, because I think I'm tagging you in now. Rose, go for it, and then Melvin can come in.
Yeah, I'm just curious, and I know we talked to some of them, but there's this whole other, again, they don't call themselves intermediaries, you know, like pooled funds, collaborative funds, a number of leading feminist funds. And one of the things that they pride themselves in is being able to do trust-based philanthropy.
Yeah.
I was speaking to one of them and they're like, yeah, we actually don't even ask our grantees to write anything. We get to know you over a period, we visit you, we like your work, and we fund you. So I'm always curious because they themselves are getting funding with conditions, right? How are they able to absorb all of that and not pass it down? And they're from the same countries as those that pass it down, so it can't be the legal requirement. So what is it really? Are we like putting a finger on? It would be interesting to understand how they're able to absorb the risk and not pass it down.
That's a question I will pass on to Irene. With some of your work understanding trust-based philanthropy, you know, players, if this has ever come up, or if it hasn't, perhaps it's something you can help us with as we move forward.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, Rose. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Hi. It's very interesting what you just said, because I read Synchronicity Earth. They just released an article saying exactly what you've just said on Mama Cash, on Frida, and taking examples from feminist movements. And it was very interesting for me to witness and to read this article and to compare it to the people I was talking to during my study, which they were from Philia, they were from directly American foundations doing trust-based philanthropy. And my study was about what are the main threats that you can see for the trust-based philanthropy to really expand the message. And they were saying that intermediaries, and you know, the Alliance magazine just sorted out big bets and so on. And it was very clear that for them, intermediaries are a problem. And this is regarding foundations. But you have exactly the same thing. For example, La Coopération of Monaco, they were just talking to me about that, saying, we would like to go, like the colleague just said, we would like to fund small organizations and organizations who are not organized enough to do due diligence and everything. But she was explaining to me that she had some difficulties to find about Rose. This is the one I presented to you.
Thank you.
She found difficulties to find some organization who would take the risk to do and fund those small organizations like that. And of course, you have the big ones like OCHA, IRC, who Alima even, who are saying, yes, we are doing this in this new way. But in fact, when you question their partners, they are telling that it's exactly the same. For example, OCHA in this big, huge full pond, they have three level of risks for local organization. And so when you are at the good level, they are going to make the due diligence maybe a little bit smaller. But it's kind of when you have arrived, oh, okay, you can just go through the road without paying the toll. Yes, but I need that before.
Yes. We did hear that actually also in our consultations. So folks, this is always what happens whenever we have our consultations is people take off with their conversations. So let me pass it on so we can move on to the next. I see time is going. Just to get some idea of what we are thinking in terms of way forward. And we'd we are presenting this to you so we can also get your insights and your thinking around, because you are all connected to this conversation in one or the other. Give us your thoughts about what else could happen, or, you know, give us a word of caution with regards to where we're thinking. So maybe Melvin, I think, pass it on to you.
Sure. And even before I start, I just want to recognize the presence of very own that we still claim, that's Caroline. Caroline has been part of this process from the beginning, and it's again good to see you as part of the team. So again, what we're trying to do as the CCC is similar to what Irene was saying. How can we make visible some of these organizations, not at a retail level, but at a wholesale level, where these organizations, even if they've not received funding, that through a method of referrals, through repositories, how can these organizations be surfaced to be seen? And then perhaps these organizations can take just a probability of success with these organizations. And one of the things that we've been thinking is, we know that due diligence, however colonial it has been, and there's a lot of progress that has happened, that there has to be a way where we can start looking at passporting this due diligence from behind, closed gates. And I would speak to this because I work for TechSoup. We have NGO source. How could we make it more accessible without the duplication that organizations have to go through, without, the cost that it takes, both in terms of time, expertise, as well as just trying to get all the necessary tools, manuals, and practices that they have. And one of the things that we've been thinking as CCC is, could we now start exploring a digital passporting tool? I know there are many that are out there, but we are coming to this space and saying, could we prototype what we already have? And part of the CCC, again, we're independent organizations and we bring different strengths. One of the strengths that TechSoup has been able to bring is a prototype called STEP, which again, we are nuancing within this consortium. And not just within this consortium, but we've pretty much focused quite a bit on funders. And we're looking for spaces where also we can bring in doers to nuance this framework. A framework that has been benchmarked by quite a number of bilaterals, but through these conversations that Chilande talked about, we're also bringing in this aspect of small organizations that would not want to mimic larger organizations simply because their context is different. And that's one of the things that we are working on, and we still need a lot of input, especially from doers, with key things that we are looking at: mutual recognition and trust. How can this system operate from a mutual trust agreement, if you talk about trust-based philanthropy, for participating organizations to honor such existing assessments? And there are few, probably one or two. I know Humantum has one, and we are putting one out there also and saying, could we also attempt to do this? And we'll make it open source so that it can be used by any organization, and perhaps also encourage small organizations through advocacy to also point some of these funders and say, we've already done X number of due diligence. Could we share with you the reports and see if they fit? Even just to make an introduction, even if it won't be the complete one. We have the standardized tool that we are focusing on, and we're also focusing on local partners. The biggest challenge that we're having is just the issue of trust, accepting another assessment from another person. How do we do that in terms of trust and risk sharing? Fragmentation that exists among the sector. Different pilots, we are piloting STEP, another one will be piloting another. How could we now start bringing all this together? But the biggest one for us that we're trying to push, not even the tooling itself, but just adoption. The buy-in from different stakeholders, both from the funder as well as the doers. So the whole spectrum. And the people who are here, we are willing for you to share. Again, if you have through the same trust building, some of the tools that or some of the assessments that you've been subjected to. You don't need to make any changes, it's just forwarding it. You can redact the places that you feel you don't want to share, for us also to just start again nuancing whatever we already have.
Great.
Then I will be passing the baton to Rose.
Yeah, thank you, Melvin, and thank you, everyone. So the other opportunity that is beginning to emerge, or that we've identified, is the opportunity to strengthen the infrastructure, and so that to enable organizations to help to support the organization, to enable them to meet these requirements, even as we work to hopefully minimize, if not, totally eliminate the requirements. But I want to also talk about, and when I mean building organizational, infrastructures, the systems, internal systems, how do we help these small organizations or big organizations to, or funders need to invest, in the systems, in policies, in tools, from governance to management, et cetera, that would then enable them to meet the requirements. But I also wanted to mention Melvin, you raised, and I think Iran also raised this idea that there are funders who are really committed and wanting to fund directly and to fund to like frontline organizations, and their number one sort of barrier is, how do we find these organizations? Because of course they're not sitting in invisible offices in Dakar or Nairobi or you name any other capital, and they're difficult to find. And so for me, there's also investing in the infrastructure that can enable those groups to be found and to be visibilized. And that's part of the work that Epic Africa is doing, with the mapping work that we do, with the platform that we have, the African CSO platform. And one of the questions that we ask in our profile is just, what's your budget? And we see that over 50% of the now almost 5,000 organizations in our database from 48 countries, over 50% have a budget below 100,000 a year. And we've now actually even started asking who is below 50,000. So they're really, there are thousands and thousands of small organizations. So they can be found, and I think Kuja is doing similar work, mapping the sector. So we're beginning to have an infrastructure that will enable funders to more easily find and connect to those groups, but it's also going to require partnerships. And one of the things we've realized, just technology alone, especially for this sort of demographic, it's a nice tool, but it needs to be accompanied by a human face. So partnerships at different levels we're finding also really important, and developing partnerships and nurturing partnerships, enabling partnerships. Also, it requires investment. It doesn't just happen by itself. And these are things I think, as we think of, just strengthen the ecosystem, that these investments need to go into areas like that. And finally, I just wanted to also say, one of our flagship initiatives is the African CSO Awards, which is part of also this conundrum in a way. And we've been postponing, but I think we'll finally launch probably early next year. And initially, our framework was assessing organizational effectiveness or capacity and rewarding excellence. But as we were thinking about the next awards in the current context, when our sector is being so beaten down, dwindling resources, shrinking space, et cetera, and we're asking ourselves, is that really what we want to do this time around, or shouldn't we reframe what this is and make it more of an inspiring, an inspirational event or process. So we're not looking to punish you and telling you you're not good enough, you didn't win, but and we start to think we should reward, or what should be recognized is really organizations that are modeling, community-led development. And we felt that levels the playing field for the small organization in the backwaters of rural Senegal, or big organization like in Dakar or Nairobi, because what we're looking at is not whether you have audits and whether you have manuals for but you're trusted. And when we've engaged with this small organization, those under 50,000, what we find often, which for us was shocking initially, these guys have been around for 20 years and more. Why? Because they're embedded in the community, they're funded by the community, they're supported by the community. So they're rooted, they're rooted. Yes, we're excited about that. Yeah, but all these things need investment. So this excuse by funders, we can't find, small organization. They can, but they need to partner and they need to find Kuja and us and the Chilandes. We're here. We can help them find those organizations.
Yeah. Thanks, Rose. And of course, the most natural other pathway is the capacity strengthening piece that is required. And I'm glad to see the comments, especially from Bridget, about making it a requirement, especially for funders. And we see this in twofold. One is to demystify what is required and how do we get to what is required for now, even as we keep negotiating. And this is mostly for those on the other end, those that are looking for the resources, mostly civil society organizations. So really think about how do we get them ready? How do we give them agency to co-create the tools and different pathways and create even peer learning spaces where we can find a place for people to know what is the hack to organization X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, very dedicated capacity strengthening for funders and intermediaries, for lack of a better word, around just building shared understanding and helping them think about adaptive practices, demystify this whole idea of risks. So some of the examples we've had here are really useful. Trying to collect case studies of those that are doing things differently and it's still working, so that people can slowly see, oh, somebody else has done it. Therefore, maybe I can take the leap of faith. So the capacity strengthening piece will also be big for us. But Matt, what else are we thinking?
Yeah, I'll speak really quickly to this point, but this is what brought Catalyst to the table initially with this collaboration, working through intermediaries. So particularly, I'll just talk a little bit about fiscal sponsors. Melvin, to your point, because of cuts to ODA, perhaps we are seeing some shrinkage in this space. But certainly one of the things that we did hear from funders is that they are thinking about advising potential grantees to work through fiscal sponsors. And of course, a movement like Catalyst, where over 6,000 individuals now across the globe, many of whom are fairly nascent in their kind of strategy and impact, and may not have all of the required processes and documentation in place to fulfill some of the big global funding due diligence and compliance requirements. And so I'll probably actually, in that case, if they want to access that kind of global funding, are kind of forced to work through those intermediaries, and particularly with fiscal sponsors. And particularly in our own case, we know that there is a whole industry around this, and they're commanding huge amounts of money for this fiscal sponsorship. In some cases, some of the very well-known ones, particularly in the US, are commanding up to a 20% cut to take fiscal sponsorship. And if you're a small organization working as part of the global majority, maybe somewhere in Latin America or Africa, and you're going for a six-figure grant, 100,000, 20,000 of that is going into the fiscal sponsorship. That's a salary. That's somebody who could be creating impact on the ground for your organization. And so one of the things that we want to do is really challenge that, to work with that, to be the bridge to those organizations and see if we can find a way through. I'll pause there. I'll hand back to you, Chilande. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So I had just posted in the chat, because we're trying, as usual, we're always trying to conquer the world with our little fingers, and time is never on our side. I did want to welcome some of your thoughts and thinking around this, some of the ideas we presented. This is where we are sort of landing, and we will be coming back to, you know, this community of folks that are in the space to see, and also please feel free to also be proactive about what else we could do together, how we can amplify some of your work or what you're seeing, how you can contribute, and how we can also contribute to your work, or even initiate new ideas with you. So Caroline, please go for it. You're muted. You put down the hand and then you're still muted.
I was saying it takes me ages to write things in chat and I can't even use the controls, but no, I just wanted to commend the work that you guys are doing, and because I have been involved in it in the past, one of the things I wanted to say, which I haven't heard yet, I think, is the space that has been created by the Compliance Conundrum for these funders to have these conversations together is really unique. And a little bit to the point that I did write in the chat is that this is something that everyone complains about, but there isn't enough concentration of effort. And when I was involved in some of those working groups that we had, those conversations earlier in the year, when some funders were brought together, they were just, and these were like grants management people, so specific to that kind of role. They were so happy to have others, their peers, and they're saying, oh, we've been talking about this and thinking, or I've been talking and thinking about this, but I haven't had anyone really to talk about it with. And so they were really grateful to be able to share experience and concerns and progress that they were making. And I think that shouldn't be underestimated, in the power of that to move this, because the other experience that I've had working on this issue for quite a long time is that, with all due respect to funders and any funders on this call, everyone thinks they're doing a better job at it than I think they really are. And everyone thinks that they've worked really, really hard to hone and streamline their organization's due diligence processes, and they probably have. But when you amplify that and you're still asking the same kind of questions to the organizations that you're supporting that they're hearing from others, it is still this duplication, still this huge friction that is getting right in the way of that important, not just the funding, but the important relationship that you want to build. And so, yeah, I would just really commend the work that you guys are doing and continue on that path. I mean, all the other things that you're doing, I think, are important because they're actually really practical too and going to move the dial, but this shouldn't be undervalued in and of itself.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline.
And Caroline, maybe if I could just build on your point, just to say very quickly, I noticed in the chat somebody was talking about going to conferences and seeing program staff turning up for these conversations, but actually, where is the space for the finance, for the legal team, and for those involved in compliance and due diligence? And we heard this reflected in the conversations. People brought huge enthusiasm to the table and said, I've long since felt this is an issue, but I've not known which levers to pull. I haven't been empowered to be able to do anything about this, and so it's really good to hear hear you share that and to see that was recognized in the chat as well. We were really surprised at the enthusiasm from people across the organization, and they weren't the usual suspects, so it was really refreshing.
And that in itself, for us, we recognize as a bright spot, the fact that we have some champions inside, so they can hopefully open the door when we knock. And so with 3 minutes to spare, I'm going to pass it on to, I know Elena's been listening keenly, just for some quick highlights of the conversation to wrap this up. And then Matt, you can close. And I just want to say thank you for showing up in all ways, showing up physically and also just engaging with us on this. It's our collective journey. So thank you for that, Elena.
Thanks, Chalande, and thank you to everyone. So yes, I've been taking some notes, sort of takeaways from the session discussion, right? We know that compliance is really focused on risk and can be tedious, cumbersome, and also a barrier for organizations. And while there is a movement in trust-based philanthropy, we also see changes in the last year where things are getting worse, particularly with institutional donors and the intermediaries that work with them. But we also understand and believe that there is a way to simplify things and make knowledge more accessible. And we know that there are also champions for change within organizations and the larger system. And so there's a lot of hope. And so some of the things that we talked about was mutual trust agreements and co-creation of relationships, strengthening of infrastructure to support organizations, even while we're trying to move the system forward, building shared understanding and demystifying things for organizations, perhaps challenging donors to take on capacity building, for instance, and using due diligence focused on empowering and building systems for organizations to make it easier. And then we also talked about engagement with fiscal sponsors or other intermediaries that can support the change we want to create. And so that sort of brings us into our future plans as the Compliance Conundrum Collaborative. Some of the things that we are focused on and wanting to move forward is exploring some of the system level tensions and confronting the disconnect between funders' intentions and actual practices, right? We brought that up, particularly through bringing funders and grantees into the same space. We are focused on advancing key priorities and solutions to move into that practical reform and providing tools that folks keep asking for. And so testing and sharing scalable models and tools. Engaging the right stakeholders by expanding our collaboration and allies. This also could include, for instance, getting the folks that are part of legal or finance, rather than only the ones who come to the sessions that are focused on this topic at different conferences. And then also really trying to map and track progress and success in the larger system level change. And so that's what we have moving forward. And as we expand our collaboration and engagement, we are really inviting folks to engage with us and stay connected with us. I think Matt is going to be putting an email. Yep. You can get in touch with Inez at Catalyst now, and she's sort of the, she wasn't able to join us today, but she's sort of the chef that makes everything work for us. And so that is the person to reach out to. That's my reflection.
And thank you, Eleanor. These sessions really are, 60 minutes goes by so quickly. Thank you, everybody, for dedicating time to this really important subject today. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us. This is Catalyzing Change Week. Please do think about the biggest take-home message from this session. We'd love you to share it on social media by including CCW hashtags, which you can see there below. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, of course, Twitter, or X, sorry, as we are now. Yeah, please do share. Please also do sign up for other sessions. There are other sessions that could be around or similar to this topic in philanthropy. For the rest of the week, we'd love you to stay with us, please. I noticed there were some conversations and questions in the chat. We will keep the chat. We will follow up with you. Xavier, I hope you get better soon. You asked some brilliant questions around digging in around a little bit more around radical trust and what that means for compliance and due diligence. And Bridget, you shared some really interesting insights of working with fiscal sponsors. So love to pick up with you all following the session. Maybe this is just the start of the conversation, but thank you again for being with us. We've really, it's been our absolute pleasure to have you with us for the last hour. So enjoy the rest of your weeks and your days, your mornings, your evenings, wherever you are in the world. And thank you from all of us.
Thank you, everyone.